You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hi, friends, and welcome to your favorite conservative podcast, Mike on the Right. I am your host, Mike Neal, and I am broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier State. This is episode 21, September 22nd, 2025. And I am so thankful that you are here with me today. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, 5 stars, anything and everything that you have or can do to continue to help us grow this show. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for your listenership, your friendship, your support. Before we get into the episode today and the items that we have, as I'm recording this, the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service is getting ready to take place. Hundreds of thousands of people, well over 100,000 people alone in Arizona, are going to try to get in the doors. They have a stadium, and they have a backup stadium, an overflow stadium, and they anticipate well over 100,000 people trying to get into those, plus the countless people that won't be able to get in there, and then the hundreds of thousands of people who will be watching and praying, maybe even millions, praying and being a part and watching. And then, of course, the vigils that have happened all across the nation since what happened to Charlie occurred. And I just want to say this on the outset. I've been dealing with this on TikTok is the Mos Eisley spaceport of humanity. It is rough and tumble. It is super liberal. It is far left. There's a lot of hateful rhetoric there. And I just got to say this. Charlie, for who he was called to be, was a forthright Christian conservative who spread the gospel. And of course, no person is ever perfect in anything and everything they do, but he stood for truth in grace and debate and discussion. And I just got to say that at the outset, we're praying for I'm praying for his family, Erica and his children, and all those friends and family and coworkers that knew him and that were a part of his life. And don't sleep on this moment. I've had all kinds of people tell me, this will just go on for a week and he'll be forgotten. No one will care. It has unleashed a roar in the Christian conservative movement, one that I have not seen in my entire time in politics and in government and in serving this mission field. And now over 100,000 people are going to show up to the event itself. Millions of people involved in vigils and watching this over the nation. Don't sleep on this moment. This is something special, something incredible, and it's just part of what I think is a move of God that already has started to begin, and this is just part of that. And so, like him, don't like him, facts are facts, the moment is the moment. Don't sleep on it. Don't miss it. Don't denigrate it. Something very special is happening in the life of our nation and in the world and the global church, and so don't sleep on that. We have 3 topics for you today that we're going to talk about. We're going to start with the FCC and ABC versus Jimmy Kimmel. We're going to talk about free speech politics and how the media has had a part to play in all of that. Then we're going to talk about something I don't think a lot of you knew or even remember that had to do with Justice Brett Kavanaugh and an attempted assassination of him in 2022, and now sentencing is getting ready to happen. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how that got missed, but more importantly, something that the defense said that really plays into what we've been discussing over essentially this past month with the tragedy after tragedy that we've had. And then finally, we're going to discuss the strikes on the drug trafficking boats that the president has been hitting. And there's been a lot of consternation about international law and due process rights and all this stuff. And we're going to talk about the invaders trying to bring drugs to our country. We're going to look at the facts, but I've got a very strong opinion on that, and we're going to get to that here shortly. But first, we're going to start with this FCC versus ABC versus Jimmy Kimmel, the free speech politics and in my opinion, how the media has hurt free speech in America. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about free speech and government power and the media's role in destroying trust. We're going to discuss this kind of I want to start with kind of the facts. The Federal Communications Commission is now in the spotlight after getting tangled up in this late night TV situation. This case centers around, if you've been living under a rock, Jimmy Kimmel, who is very openly partisan, very controversial, often hypocritical, in my opinion, and also not funny. He used to be funny, and the more and more that these late night talk show hosts have made their shows about their politics, the more and more these shows have slid off in ratings, and really the less people that have been watching. I don't watch any late night television anymore. I think it's all awful. And so, this moment, though, his show has gotten at least indefinitely canceled. I assume he's not coming back. And this moment raises a bigger question. Should the government, through the FCC, be threatening broadcasters over controversial speech? Or is this really about a network just using this controversy and ratings and politics an excuse to as cover to cancel the show? Where does the media have blame in any and all of this? We're going to talk about that. So again, Jimmy Kimmel made some comments very recently tying specifically about the Charlie Kirk incident. It's just one of his many moments across his career that he's made controversial, baseless statements that have really harmed the fabric of America. And in this scenario, he essentially said that a far-right MAGA extremist, proven, was the one that took out Charlie Kirk. And we know through the FBI and the investigation that that's not true. This guy that took out Charlie Kirk took a left veer in his life, was very troubled, and even the life choices and who he was with and hanging out with and his beliefs. And so with that became a lot of outrage across America, and ABC, under pressure, facing a swirl of criticism, suspended the show indefinitely. And of course, the FCC weighed in. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not exactly sure who did what first, but the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, which is Brendan Carr, warned that broadcasters who air false or misleading content could face consequences. And there is a lawful piece of that. But again, the airways, if you don't understand much about the airways, most people don't, is that we, the public, own those. And there are rules and regulations around using them. And so for so long, in the name of free speech, the media has been allowed to pit us all against each other and to lie and to make these narratives. And while their speech is protected, and I will stand by that's protected, the fact that they continue to lie and denigrate and really drive a wedge in America, they are certainly far more the enemies of the people than the left and the right against each other, because they're the ones that are fighting, pushing us to fight against each other. They create these false narratives and this because it's what gets clicks and what drives media traffic and social media and money. Now, Senator Ted Cruz has kind of blasted back his position on the FCC, coming out and saying that this is, shouldn't be happening, and that we're gonna, take action potentially. He kind of says this is like a mafia boss threatening a protection racket. Do what I want or else. And of course, this has escalated beyond one comedian, one show, and kind of what does this look like? Now, again, I have said that Jimmy Kimmel is not funny. He has a long history of sharp partisanism. And by the way, he's a total hypocrite, because when COVID was going on, and the recording is so stark, and he was allowed to say this and this was okay, that during COVID, if you got the COVID shot, if you had gotten the vaccine and you had some other type of sickness or something happen, you should be allowed in hospitals. And if you were sick with COVID or anything else and you didn't get vaccinated, you should not be cared for or treated. 100% verbatim. He said it. Lots of applause in his crowd. Ridiculous statements. And his show, maybe I don't even know when it started. Might have been around then. Maybe been in 2022. I saw some data points, but I didn't pull them up for the show today. But what I did read in, I believe, the Wall Street Journal is that his audience has shrunk by a third in the last couple of years. His ratings have tanked, and people don't want to watch it. And so if the FCC had just stayed out of the way, the controversy itself, along with the ratings, probably would have taken care of itself. Now, I believe the FCC has a right to enforce certain standards. But I honestly think that this was just kind of an unforced error that we didn't need. Now I don't believe that the FCC should be canceling people and shows it doesn't like. But I also believe that the media has a responsibility to the public to not be hateful and to not mislead. But that's again, I've said this before. All of us, media and otherwise, we all have the right to free speech. However, you do not have a right to shield yourself away from the consequences of your words. And understand, the First Amendment protects speech from the government action. But that if your company, and you have shamed your organization and company because of something you said, they are not forced to associate with you. They have just as many rights as you do, or that sole proprietorship or limited liability corporation or S corp, anyone and everyone. They don't have to associate with you, which is why you've seen thousands and thousands of people fired for their comments. And Jimmy Kimmel is probably just one of the highest profile ones. And of course, the FCC kind of stepped in it. So again, I don't believe that the FCC should meddle in this situation. It was going to take care of itself. And here's kind of what I think. I think that ABC is just using this opportunity as a shield, kind of under the guise of this FCC comment, the FCC comment plus Jimmy's comment, as just kind of a pretext to get rid of a show that's failing. And they can really kind of point to, well, this, Jimmy stepped in it here, and the FCC kind of really putting the screws to us, and we don't want to, it deflects blame from just saying, hey, this show sucks, and because they've all seen what happened to Colbert's show, and that slide off, right? Because again, this type, we don't watch Jimmy Kimmel or anyone else for my political news and commentary. I'm not saying that poking fun at politics sometimes isn't funny, but if that is your if that is your lead foot, and you have to do it every time, and it's sharply partisan against the right, even some people in the center and center left are going to get turned off by that, and that's why Jimmy's show has failed. And so certainly, I think the FCC kind of stepped in it here. I do believe that they have an onus to ensure that the media waves, that the airwaves are used properly within the rules and bounds of the law. But this was going to take care of itself. So look, like Jimmy Kimmel, don't like Jimmy Kimmel, that's fine. You do not have the right to be shielded from the consequences of your words. He found that out. You have a right to free speech. The government can't quash your speech, but your organization and company, if you embarrass them or make them look bad, or you break the policies and codes of conduct, they absolutely have the right. This is not a snowflake moment. This is not cancel culture. The cancel culture that happened during the Obama and Biden years, and even the fight during Trump, is not comparable. This is not the same. We're not canceling whole segments of the culture. People are literally getting the consequences of their words and actions, and they just don't like it. And to me, that's grow up. Have your positions, but you're not going to get no one is going to associate with you if you want to celebrate assassinations. And if you want to lie about a situation that is very active. That's what Jimmy has found out. So I'll leave it there. I want to move on to some other items, but I don't feel sad for Jimmy Kimmel. Let's move on. Here's another controversial topic that has gotten, of course, less coverage here in recent days, and that is, you've heard now 3 times that the Trump administration, using military assets, have destroyed drug trafficking boats in international waters, bringing drugs to the United States. Today we're talking about a very simple point. Nations defend their citizens. When criminal organizations flood our streets with poison and violence, and when they use the sea to smuggle fentanyl and cartel terror into our neighborhoods, the United States has to act, and act decisively. In the last few weeks, we've seen now 3 U.S. strikes on vessels that the president says and that intelligence says were trafficking drugs into our hemisphere. We'll walk through the facts. We'll talk about what the critics have said. We'll talk about the legal arguments and why I fully stand behind taking out these narco terrorists. But I want to give you the facts in case you don't agree with me. I know that there's some people that say these guys have to have due process and we're killing other people's citizens, and that's fine. You're welcome to that opinion. But I'm going to talk about what really matters here. So again, in early September and mid-September, there were 2 military strikes. U.S. forces struck a speedboat the administration said was linked to a specific cartel, and I'll butcher the name, which is why I'm not going to read it. And the White House released video saying that they were targeting narco-terrorists. And there again, it was in mid-September. A second vessel struck. 3 men reported killed. The administration again saying that they had information that they were violent drug traffickers. They were tied to Venezuelan criminal networks. And then just recently, it's kind of gotten lost a little bit because of the national outcry related to Charlie Kirk's assassination. The president announced that there was a 3rd lethal strike on a vessel that U.S. Southcom had taken responsibility of killing 3 people, again described as narco terrorists, and they were taking known trafficking routes. We have intelligence on this, and the video of the strike was posted by the administration. Now, here's what the critics are saying. Let's and I want to give this again. I have an opinion, but I want to give you the facts first. The critics say that there's a legal issue with this, that legal scholars and human rights groups say that these look like extrajudicial killings, that it's outside of a judicial process in international waters, and question whether the executive action without congressional authorization violates the Constitution and international law. They say that they demand proof that these vessels were carrying drugs and that lethal force was necessary. They also say that this is an escalation within kind of the geopolitical sphere, that Venezuela and others are saying that this is a provocation and an undeclared campaign, and human rights watch organizations are warning about civilian harm. And I have to say about this, cartels are the enemy of all of us. Drug traffickers are the enemy of the American people, one of the enemies of the American people. And we don't negotiate with cartels. We stop them. These are not peacetime fishermen. They're criminal organizations that traffic poison, and they sponsor corruption, and they fund violence. They are invading our country with both their bodies and their drugs. They are enemy combatants. This isn't like some tourist on a boat that we decided to take out. These people are destroying lives, communities, and our country and other countries. We're not the only ones that are certainly taking advantage of these. There's drug organizations that still are alive and well in America today, and you can see how it harms the American people. And we're not going to take the word of Venezuela either. It's the same like Iran and North Korea and China and all these other folks that will lie through their teeth to cover their actions when they are really Russia, another one, lying through their teeth to make them look like they're just magnanimous and they're just the victim and whatever, and they just let this stuff go on. No. And I want to tell you something else about international law. International law, just like the United Nations, is one of the biggest jokes in American and world history because it is so skewed against America most of the time. We're the ones that fund so many, humanitarian projects and trying to get as many people out of poverty as possible, and against terrorism across the world. And then at the same time, we have this international law that says that who's this doofus that's running for mayor in New York City? I forget his name, the socialist. And he's essentially said that if he becomes mayor, when Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, comes to New York, he's going to arrest him for war crimes under international law. America does not recognize international law in that way. And it is also illegal in this country to arrest while coming here for UN activities or activities with the federal government. That these low-level functionaries in government, compared to the United Nations, the mayor of New York is a low-level functionary. Compared to the federal government, while it is our largest city, he doesn't have the right to do that, right? And so we don't recognize this international law because it is always skewed against American interests. And law experts say that under international law, lethal force at sea is tightly constrained. But no. You really think that we were going to say, hey, you guys got to turn back like it was a traffic stop? Absolutely not. You don't think those people didn't have weapons, probably machine guns and other types of things to fight? Of course they did. So no, international law seeks to we have to give these folks due process in international waters coming to bring drugs to our nation. No. Take care of them before they get on U.S. soil. That's unfortunately why we fight wars on foreign soil, because we don't want the war fought here. And the more and more we can do outside of American soil, the better it is for our citizens, specifically in the drug war. These traffickers are enemy combatants in practical terms. Cartels behave like militias. They have command structures, armed personnel, territorial control. They engage in violence, kidnapping, murder, trafficking. Look what goes on in Mexico. The Mexican government does not have a hold of its country. Cartels often assassinate political leaders, political candidates, and their enemies all the time. All the time. The Mexican government does not have control of its nation. Do we really want to let these people come here? Of course not. They actively infiltrate the United States, smuggling networks, corrupt officials, trafficking routes, pipelines of death. That's not garden variety crime. That's organized cross-border invasions and threats. We can't have that here. And they provide weaponized drugs, fentanyl, synthetic opioids, that are designed to kill in tiny doses, that are designed to keep people hooked. Absolutely not. We have to stop this. We have to disrupt the supply train. We have to stop allowing the supply of this to come into our country. And we have to do what we have to do, and striking them in international waters or where they're coming from to deter them, to stop them. We have to do this because once it gets on American soil, oftentimes it destroys people's lives. So in the end, I'm telling you, this is not a political position for me. But everything is political. Everything is hyper-politicized, right? Like, we can't even agree that illegal immigration doesn't hurt our country and that we should find a way to stop that. Again, there's a lot to do on legal immigration that can make this a better process so that we don't have so many people trying to break the law. It's the same thing here. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. We all should agree that drugs trafficked to the United States by cartels should be blocked with every available resource this government has. It's not political to me. My sister, I was just talking to someone about this the other day, almost 11 years ago, passed away because she was struggling with drug addiction. Started with a gateway and got access to things she never should have had. And it hurts my heart to even continue to think that there are people day in and day out because of these cartels who are affected like that. I don't want that pain for anybody else. I want it off our streets, and I support the president's position. Last item I have for you today, again, of just a list of controversial topics. Did you know that in 2022 there was an attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh? Of course you didn't, because it was not nearly covered as it could have been, one, and certainly today where things are at are almost not being covered at all. We know that America is living in the era of rising political violence, and we have to stop it. People like Charlie Kirk were attempting to do so by having civil discourse and of course, disagreements in public and pushing back on the slippery slope and pushing back on ideologies that we cannot have in America. We've seen officials threaten, lawmakers attack, Supreme Court justices now targeted at their homes, and yet some stories that it should have shocked the nation barely made a ripple in the media. And one of those stories is the attempted assassination of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And today, sentencing is starting to unfold right now, which is why I'm talking about this. And we need to revisit this case, not just to recall what happened, to expose what it says about media bias, mental health, and dangerous trends of political extremism in America. And I know that you're probably, I've talked about this now several weeks in a row, but it is so deadly, just like the drug war, it is so deadly to our country and to our people that we have to call it out where it lies. But I want to tell you about this because this is, even before kind of this segment of time, these last couple of months especially, all the way back to the Minnesota legislators, so probably even further than that, right? Just this stretch of political attacks and other types of attacks in our country. In 2022, June of 2022, a man named Nicholas Roske, R-O-S-K-E, I may be saying that incorrectly, was arrested outside of Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home. He was armed with a handgun, ammunition, zip ties, duct tape, burglary tools, and he told police that he intended to kill the justice. And there's a larger story to that. My understanding is that he approached U.S. Marshals and essentially, when he realized that he was not going to be successful and they were kind of sizing him up, turned himself in. Now, prosecutors are seeking a 30-year prison sentence for the man who attempted the assassination of a U.S. Supreme Court justice. Did you? It's just so amazing that like almost nobody I've talked to knows that this occurred. The thwarted assassin's plan was exposed only because he dialed 911 on himself before carrying it out once he realized that he was going to be unable to do so. But it also shows the deep mental instability that the man had. And now at sentencing, the defense have pointed out to his mental health decline and gender identity struggles as factors that drove him towards this violent path. And that is key to me. That's kind of why I want to talk about this today. Because look, I have said on this show, and I will say it again, evil knows no ideology. It is not owned by one side or another, one party or another, one country or another. Evil and hate abound across a fallen world. As a Christian, this world is fallen, and we're going to only continue to deal with this until God returns to earth. When Jesus returns and when heaven comes to earth, that is when all of this will stop. But until then, we're going to continue to deal with this. So, of course, I want to. The media has, of course, very limitedly covered this because it doesn't fit the narrative of the media, as I've been talking about here very recently. Because this is just fits right in with what happened at the Catholic Church and School in Minneapolis, what now has happened to Charlie Kirk. And before this string of incidents, we're starting to see that transgender ideology and gender identity ideology and struggles are a mental health concern. It's not a you do you, my body, my choice. I choose who I am, and I don't feel like I am who I am and what God made me. No, that's a sickness. And because it doesn't fit the narrative of trying to put all extremism on the right, which, again, there are people on the right that are too extreme. There are people on the right who break the law. There are people on the right who kill people. There are people on the left that do it too. And of course, depending on who you ask, data point shows one side or the other, kills more people. I'm not getting into that. But I am specifically targeting the mental health issues surrounding transgenderism and gender identity. And very recently, this was sprung on the court. As they're getting ready to sentence him, he has now come out as a woman. That's what he's saying. That's the finality of all this thing. Like, we've had the conversation about gender ideology. We've had the conversation about, his gender identity. And now suddenly in the last minute, this is why I did it. This is it's an interesting seeding of the point, finally, that's becoming more mainstream. But of course, that's why the media is not covering it. He's coming out as transgender and saying that attributed to why he's almost did what he did. And why does this matter today? Because it lines up exactly with what we've been talking about again, the church and school in Minnesota and Charlie Kirk and a number of things, right? But again, I'm not going to say that it is a rampant. Again, I guess let me correct that. I go back to that evil is evil no matter where it is found. But we have to stop. It's very dangerous to continue to coddle gender ideology issues, including transgenderism, and to say that they're not mental health. And it is affecting the mental health of people, and it is causing them to do, when you chop things off, and when you take medications and hormones and all these things to change who you are, and you try to do all these things, and then of course society rejects a man dressed as a woman most of the time, or vice versa, or trying it's not natural. It is not what God intended. And it messes all the hormone imbalances and everything in your mind and brain. And that's what I'm saying here today is that look, this happened in 2022. Most people didn't hear about it. There were a couple stories when it happened. It's faded away. Almost nobody is covering. I come across it in my studies this week to get ready for the show, and I was like, I got to talk about this. This guy's getting ready to get sentenced, and he is blaming his gender ideology situation on this, and we can't sleep on this either. We've got to get a hold of this in America. And so take that, again, as part of the evolving discussion on this matter. Take that for what it is. Thank you, folks, for listening today. As the show closes today, I'm getting ready to watch the Kirk Memorial. You're going to see millions of people moved today, and we're starting to see a move of God in America. Don't sleep on it. This is this generation's JFK moment. It's very important, and I believe that there is a move of God coming across this nation. And while there are certainly a lot of things that are pieces of that, I believe this is kind of the last straw catalyst, and we're here now. And so, I look forward to discussing this maybe midweek. I'm not sure that I'll do another episode on the matter, but thank you so much for listening. Again, I need your 5-star ratings. I need your shares. I need your likes. I need your word of mouth support. Have a great week.